Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by my co-host, Jacob Billington, and also Jim Bay, who's seems to be a regular now on the show. Welcome, guys. We've got doing a weekly show now, so lots of more stuff to kind of be able to talk about as we go through the weeks. But lots of stuff happened in this last week. We have a few different news things. We got a trade that happened. We got a suspension, a bunch of other stuff that's going on. We got Hall of Fame weekend just is wrapping up. So how's it going, Jim?
Well, it's going very well. Yeah, it's been an exciting week. It's just one thing on my bucket list is I really want to get up there to Toronto sometime and be a part of that induction weekend. Um, it- for whatever reason, it doesn't ever seem to happen, but I think in the next couple of years, I got to make that happen.
For sure. Yeah, I'd like to get out there too. It seems to be a very interesting place to visit. So yeah, definitely on my bucket list too. And Jacob, how's it going?
Good. Yeah, like you mentioned, Jim, I'd love to get up for induction weekend. That'd be great.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I would think it'd be pretty fun to go up there for sure. So let's jump into the show and talk and do our news and rumors roundup, which like I say a lot of quite a few things happening. We'll start with a trade that happened a couple days ago now. Daniel Sprong getting traded from the Canucks back to the Seattle Kraken. Very short stint with the Canucks. I mean, I was hoping that he'd probably be around a lot longer, but obviously didn't seem to fit in Rick Tocchet's system. Tocchet already was reducing his ice time to next to nothing. His last game, he had only 9 minutes, and that was Besser was out of the game for most of the game. You'd think he'd be the guy getting up and getting more minutes because he's an offensive guy, but he never did. He didn't get a boost. It was Niels Höglander that moved up the lineup and got more minutes. So obviously Tocchet didn't trust him. Coaching staff, of course, seemed to not either. So they traded him to a place that he had a lot of success with. So I'll start with you, Jim. What do you think about the trade? Biggest thing, the trade itself, but also that is there something in the works now to trade? I mean, Jonathan Lekramaki has now been called up. Declare Joshua is on his way to come back. So I mean, the roster is getting a bit full. So what do you think about it all here?
Well, yeah, unless you know the backstory, maybe just sending him back to Seattle, it just wasn't working out. You might as well just, put him in a place where he's comfortable. And, we had a little, pre-discussion about are they going to do another trade or are they making room? I think both things can be possible. I think I think the Canucks are kind of holding steady, but I think if, they really want to give their team a jolt, they didn't look particularly good against Edmonton. Saturday night. So I think both things are possible. I think they want to give those the two they called up a look with the idea that down the road we may make a trade. I think the Canucks are going to I think they should be a team that really tries to do whatever they can moving forward to make themselves better because I think they do have the potential to have a deep run in the playoffs.
Sure. I know, Jacob, we talked about Daniel Sprong on the Canucks preview show, and I had high hopes for him. I think I predicted like 20 goals, 20 plus goals, because could play in the top six, play with Pettersson. He only got like one game with them. And then he was to the fourth line, then healthy scratched. Obviously didn't seem to fit. What'd you think about Sprong's time with the Canucks, them moving on from him so quickly?
Well, 20 goals was always, I mean, he's done it, and he's done it on the fourth line, but there's a reason that he always plays fourth line minutes. And it's just he doesn't he doesn't give 110% on both sides of the puck, which is something that is really detrimental to him and the team when he's on the ice. I think that the whole point of this is to make room for Jonathan Lekeri. He's been outstanding in the AHL so far, 5 goals in 7 games, and he finished the year really strong in the SHL last year, and he's a really highly touted prospect. So I think making room for him, if you can trade Daniel Sprong and like, there's no possible chance that Lekeri is worse than Daniel Sprong was, even though he might be a defensive liability in the roster, but he adds so much goal scoring potential.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think the biggest thing is he just didn't seem to, I mean, talk it, obviously. I don't know if we didn't like him, but he didn't fit in where, defensively. And this last game, he made maybe an ill-advised drop pass in the line and the out right by the blue line, turned over the puck, and then went the other way. I mean, that's not something, and that's of course that's something that he does. I mean, he's a very risky player, and that's why he hasn't stuck on teams for longer than a couple seasons. And going back to Seattle as a new coach, Dan Biosma was not there when he was in Seattle before, so we'll see if he fits with him. They have a pretty full roster too. I don't know where he's going to fit, but I mean, he's going to be comfortable at least in Seattle with players that he's probably played with before. We'll see how he does. Everyone's kind of predicting a hat trick when the Canucks play the Kraken in December. That Sprong scores a hat trick against them, but I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. Former Canucks always do well against the Canucks when they come back against them. So we'll see how that all goes.
That's free money on the anytime goal scorer.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I do like Lekomäki coming up. I mean, I don't know if that was why they moved Sprong, but he's coming. He's going to be playing most likely on the top line with Miller and Pius Suter. He was practicing there today. So, I mean, we'll see how he does. I mean, he definitely deserves the call up. Like you said, 5 goals in 7 games, 4 goals on the power play. Canucks power play needs a boost. Maybe he can give it to them a bit because Besser's not there. I shouldn't have too high expectations if he doesn't score a bunch. All right, he comes up. Shouldn't be disappointing. I want to see how he does in the NHL, and he has a lot of potential. And that shot itself, I want to see it and see if he can score some goals. So we'll see how that goes. Same with Dakota Joshua. He was practicing with the team too. So these two guys coming into the lineup definitely need to make room. And Sprong was one of the guys out. And of course, cap space is increased there too because they didn't take anything back. It was future considerations. So basically nothing. Could turn into a draft pick. There was talk about it that may turn into something like that, but we'll see how that goes down the line. All right, we'll stick with the Canucks because the next one is suspension. Tanner Jeannot getting suspended 3 games for his high hit on Brock Besser, which, of course, Besser's still out of the lineup with concussion, calling it upper body injury, but we all know it's probably a concussion. And he hasn't skated since. There's always that talk about suspension being connected to the injury, and the guys usually get suspended less time than the guys out of the lineup for. So I want to ask you, Jacob, what do you think about the suspension? Was it severe enough for the hit? What'd you think about that?
I think by the standards of the NHL's Department of Player Safety, it's the right call. 3 games is the right call. In a vacuum, it's terrible. There's no reason that he shouldn't be out longer. But based on the standard that George Peros and the Department of Player Safety have set for suspensions for headshots, it's very clear that they don't take them seriously and they don't really care about defending their players. So I could go on a half-hour tangent about how ridiculous the player safety department is and how useless they are when it comes to protecting their players. Player safety is about protecting the players' paychecks and not protecting the actual players. Because you look, when a guy gets suspended, they don't get paid. When a guy gets hurt, they still get paid. So it's all good. All issues are solved. So they don't care about protecting the player. It's all about their paycheck. So that's why we see such small suspensions. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And no, that's not a long enough suspension. But by their standards, it's the right decision.
Yeah, there's people saying it should have been 5. I mean, I think 5 games is still too little, but I know it's maybe illogical, but I think what it should be is that the guy should be suspended as long as the player's injured. So
see, but then you can run into problems.
Then but there's the problems, right? There's a lot of problems in that.
Because like Connor McDavid hits we'll just use Daniel Sprong knee on knee. Daniel Sprong can just milk that for 3 months.
That's true.
And then you're going to trade off Daniel Sprong for Connor McDavid when realistically it shouldn't have been more than a 1-game suspension. I do understand I think they could do like in special cases, like when it's a clear target to the head or something, you say, okay, you're out as long as this guy. But yeah, I don't know. It's a really slippery slope when you start doing that.
Yeah, that's why I say that's why I made the caveat. It is illogical, but I feel like it in some cases it should fit. But yeah, I do agree. He could milk it and it's like, well, I'm still out. Well, McDavid should still be out, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. Jim, what do you think about the suspension that Jeannot got?
Well, I agree a little bit with Jacob. I think when you get down to, how the NHL works, and again, you also have to realize that, Jeannot is part of a very strong union who would definitely help him fight any suspension that would, be deemed too serious. Again, from the standpoint of hitting somebody in the head, and I don't have anything to add to what Jacob said. I agree 100% with that. Um, the headshots are just horrible. This is only his first suspension.
Mhm.
So you take that into consideration a little bit. He did get like a little fine a couple of years ago for a hit on Brady Tkachuk. He got like a $2,000 fine or something. So, he's not like a repeat offender. We don't know what was said or what he said in the phone call that was made prior to the suspension. So yeah, I'm a little leery, especially when it comes to headshot of being like, was 3 games enough? But the reality of it is that's probably a fair suspension.
Yeah, it's about what the standards of the league is and what they do. And you look back at all the history of it, 3 games seems to be it's not right, but it's in line with what what they do, right? So yeah, he's served 1 game of that suspension, I believe, or is it 2? It's 2 now.
Yeah.
So he'll be back soon, and Besser, not sure. He hasn't
Right.
skated, like I say, hasn't skated since. Talkett didn't have an update when he had his media availability this morning, or this afternoon. So we're not sure how long he's going to be out. Like I said, with concussions, it's very iffy, and they have to be symptom free for a certain amount of time. And if they're not, that resets the clock. They got to be. Concussions are
Yeah.
very interesting. There's no set timelines on when guys are going to be back. And hopefully it wasn't a serious concussion and he'll be out, he'll be back sooner because rather than later because he got off to a great start to the season. He had 6 goals to start. And hopefully it doesn't derail too much of the season for him.
Well, Tanner Jeannot at the beginning of the season, he hit Artem Zub in the head and knocked him out with a concussion for 9 games, is what Zub missed. So it didn't get a suspension, it didn't get a look or a penalty or anything like that. It was a hard hit. It was pretty high, but like it wasn't the most egregious hit that I've ever
Mhm.
seen. But it left Zub out for 9 games with a concussion. So 9 games is an eighth of the season.
Mhm.
So. That's a big chunk.
Yeah, I hate, and that's why the concussions are they're tough. I mean, you don't know how long guys will be out. They could be out months. They could be out their career. I mean, Tucker
Yeah.
Pullman they weren't sure how long he was gonna be out, just kept being out, and he's still out. So,
Yeah.
but I think he was ahead of history of concussions, so it wasn't his first. I'm trying to think back if Besser's had a concussion before. Most of his injuries have not been that related to the head. It's been hip, back, uh, stuff like that. So I don't think he's had a concussion, but I might be wrong. All right, let's move. We're on some Predators here. Let's go to Dante Fabbro, who was claimed off waivers by the Columbus Blue Jackets today. Uh, Pretty high cap hit. There was speculation that he was going to be able to clear waivers because of that, but the Blue Jackets have a ton of cap space, so they have no problems with claiming him. What do you think about the move from the Blue Jackets' perspective and the fact that Fabbro was put on waivers in the first place?
Well, me first,
Oh yeah.
man.
I'm not sure who if
Um,
I said.
that's okay. I think it's good for Fabro. I think he needed a change of scenery. He clearly wasn't, we'll say, playing up to his potential in Nashville for whatever reason. In Columbus, he gets a fresh start. And I also think, as it kind of, you know, talks about something that is going on in Nashville where Trotz has said he's ready to clean house and start a rebuild and stuff. This just might have been the first little salvo of, yep, I'm really, prepared to do this, and we're gonna, cut this kid and let him go, and we'll see what happens from there. So, um, Blue Jackets have nothing to lose. Uh, they're a team on a rebuild, and if he can, find a role for them, then it's a win-win for both sides.
And Jacob, what'd you think about the move Fabbro? I mean, he was a trade chip not that long ago, or the Predators were looking to maybe trade him, but he ends up being on waivers, and Blue Jackets get him for free.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on in Columbus with their blue line. You got some big names like you've got Damon Severson, Zach Werenski, Ivan Provorov, David Jiricek in there as well, and now you throw in now you're gonna throw in Dante Fabbro. I was gonna say Robbie Fabry, but I knew that was wrong. Um, but yeah, like they have a very interesting blue line because they have a lot of really good names. And Fabro is a guy that you look at a team like Columbus and you're like, yeah, he's probably going to get a good chance there, but I don't think he is going to get a big chance
Hmm.
and play a big role because like Provorov, Severson, Jiricek, those are all on the right side. So I don't know how much of a chance he's going to get to play big minutes there. So it'll be really interesting to see what their plan is, and to pay him $2.5 million to play maybe a seventh defenseman behind David Jiricek. I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see why it made sense for Columbus. Figured it would be a team like Edmonton that's been
Hmm.
looking for a guy like Fabbro. I don't see why Columbus made the claim.
Yeah, interesting because they're not. I mean, maybe a couple seasons ago when their defense was, decimated by injury, but they're pretty healthy on the blue line. So I don't know. And maybe they thought he could maybe break into that and see how he does, but or they may even trade him down the line too and get something for him. So I'm surprised the Predators couldn't make a trade. They probably would have tried a bit harder if he was in the went through waivers and got to the AHL, but yeah, and we'll see how that all goes. I know there was talk maybe the Canucks could maybe put a claim in for him because they're looking at maybe getting some other guys for the blue line, especially a guy that can move the puck. And they in the past have looked at him in a trade. Has been rumors about having interest in him. So they might have put in a claim. We don't know. I mean, how, when that is. So because the Blue Jackets are lower in the standings, I believe, right now, so they get the higher priority. So we'll see how that all goes in Columbus. Right, Jim, you mentioned the rebuild thing with Barry Trotz. I know there was after that they kind of backed off of it. They didn't say he was going to completely tear down studs and go back to and clean house, but they're struggling quite a. I mean they're not very good as a team right now, especially after all those big signings, getting Stamkos, getting Marcia. So I thought that they were going to be a big contender in the West. Not so much right now. If they do keep struggling, do you see Barry Trotz maybe making a few moves to start a rebuild, or I mean, I don't know if it's a rebuild, retool, whatever it is, because he did say that he's not going to be moving guys like Stamkos or Marcia, so or even like guys like Forsberg.
Yeah, I think that, there are things that they can do, and it actually wouldn't shock me he said it, and I think he just might have said it publicly. So, those veteran players don't start getting on nerve. But, that stuff like that goes, a long or a short way in the locker room, depending on how you're looking at it. I could see him doing it. I mean, they, did pretty well, especially at the end of the year without Marshall and Stamkos. Stamkos is, fairly inexpensive by, standards for what he signed for. So, could he trade, Stamkos for some, nice draft picks, a younger player? I think if they continue to struggle, I think it's a possibility. But on the other hand, that could just be, a wake-up call.
Mhm.
After that really slow start, they are just kind of like, 5-4, 5-5, I think, in their last 10. So they have started to pick it up a bit, but they still have a ways to go. They're still, as you mentioned, not playing like a very good hockey club and not playing like the team, that played at the end of last year when they made a big run and made the playoffs. So
Mhm.
we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob, we said at the beginning of the season about these big names coming in. Maybe it'll take some time for them to kind of mesh in with the team, but even their bigger guys aren't doing as well. I could a rebuild happen or a semi rebuild, I guess, moving some of the guys that are not the big names.
Yeah, I think completely retooling the bottom six and then the bottom four is something that would be really helpful. Because you think of the Nashville Predators, and they don't have much of a core.
Hmm.
Like they have Forsberg, they have O'Reilly, and they have Yossi and Saros, of course. But like outside of that, like they don't have that stud of a third line center that they go after, or that is super impactful all the time. Obviously they added Stamkos and Marchessault to really help with that, but outside of those top four forwards, you got Tommy Novak, Gustav Nyquist, who had a phenomenal year last year, but that was a bit of a one-off. Colton Sissons, Cole Smith, like these aren't core players to a team. So if he can move them out, like I could totally see Thomas Novak and Gustav Nyquist moved this year. I don't know what the return would look like, but just kind of reshaping some of that. Um, I think Alexander Carrier makes a bit too much money at 3.75 on the back end. Luke Shen, he's fine, but he's 35 and he's getting up there. They just need a bit of a different look throughout the rest of the lineup. They've been banking on Tommy Novak to kind of become that really strong second line center, and he just hasn't. So.
I know we talked, I believe, in one of the previous shows too, we talked about the Predators being that they could maybe be a one or two line team. And it could end up being that way right now. Like you said, the bottom six is it's just a mishmash of players that aren't big names. They're okay, but we need, like say Tommy Novak was a guy that you'd think could step up there. Hasn't so far, but I mean, they could be a good team. I think they can be. And we saw the Oilers turned everything around after having a bad start, and the Predators could be a team that could turn themselves back into a playoff team, very early in the season. So we'll see how that all goes, and if Trotz does decide to do something at some point.
Well, and they have 8 or 9 million tied up in buyouts and retention
Yeah.
over the next 2 years still too. Obviously with names like Matt Duchene is there. They're still paying Kyle Turris for 4 more years. Matthias Ekholm, they're only retaining 250,000 on, but that adds up. So like they're gonna have money coming off the books
Mhm.
after next season. So that could help them as well.
They also got a ton of first round picks right now,
Yes.
which they could do something with around the trade deadline too. So yeah, there's a lot that Trotz could do from now until around that time. We'll see what he decides to do. All right, Jim, you wanted to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. They're 14-1 to start the season. We've talked about them a lot on this show to start, and when they were on that big run and they lost to the Maple Leafs that broke their streak, but they haven't missed a beat since then. Keep winning. I mean, it's a historic start. What do you think about it all?
Yeah, historic is a good word. It was good from my standpoint that Winnipeg played Dallas on Saturday afternoon, and then I got a chance to see him because usually a Winnipeg game is well past my bedtime. So it was good, to see him. I saw him, I think, one other time earlier, and I was like extremely impressed. You know, Dallas has struggled a little bit. They struggled in Finland. They did beat the Blackhawks, when they came back, but that's a really good team. And, Winnipeg was the best team from start to finish in that game. So it's historic. So, like, the question I'm going to throw out to you guys is the challenge Winnipeg has going forward is now they got a little 3 game road trip to the eastern part of the United States. They get to face the Rangers, the Lightning, and the Panthers. Who's going to beat them? Who's the first team to beat them and kind of break this 10-game winning streak and 14 out of 15, 15 out of 16, whatever they want to run to?
Yeah, that's a tough gauntlet too. I mean, I think they're going to lose to the. I'll say they're going to lose to the Panthers on that one.
Do you think they're going to beat the Rangers? And again, I'll go back to as a Lightning guy. I think they're going to beat the Lightning.
Yeah.
The Lightning haven't been playing well, so that would not surprise me at all. Even though the Lightning are coming off one of their week break. Okay.
What about you, Jacob? Who do you think will?
I don't know. I don't think they're gonna lose. I think
All right.
I think it'll be the second game against Florida. So they're 14, 15, 16. So they'll go 17-1-0 before their second loss.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, I'll ask one more question on it. It's like, how many losses do you think will they have at the end of the year?
I'm gonna
Into the calendar
go,
year, like is there
The
okay?
calendar year, yeah.
oh, the calendar year.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I mean it's kind of far off to say lots of the full season.
I'm going to go four.
It's only three
Teams
losses.
hit teams hit a rough spot. You'll get three more losses. Teams hit rough spots. I mean, they are playing very well, and hopefully, I don't want to jinx them or anything. They seem to be very healthy. Um, they're getting great goaltending. Um, but I looked at their schedule a little bit beyond those three, and they have some challenges. So I'm going to go with four by when the clock turns 2025.
So they have 24 games between now and 2025. I'm gonna say they have a total of six.
All right. So that's five more losses then.
Five more losses in the next 24 games. Oh no, the sky's falling.
That's crazy. Pretty still crazy record just
Yeah.
to end the year on. Yeah, the Jets. I mean, there was talk at the beginning of the season that they maybe not make the playoffs. I mean, right now it's kind of looking at that's. I mean, President's Trophy at this point is pretty big possibility, but still a lot of season to go. They have a big window now to maybe go into a bit of a skid and still be fine. Um, so I mean, you'd never want to have that, but you have
They
that
could
bit of
finish
a
they could
cushion.
finish the season 500 and still comfortably make the playoffs.
Yeah. So I mean, they have a cushion to maybe struggle a little bit, which I mean, you have ups and downs throughout the season. Except the Bruins didn't. That one, they've had the
Yeah.
record. So you never know. The
Well,
Jets
so
could
they had 65 wins. They went 65, I don't know, and 17 losses. I think that it was 65, 13, and 4. Did the Jets do better than that?
oh,
I think that
yeah,
they can certainly challenge it.
yeah. After a great start to it, I mean, it is. I mean, that's the thing. There's so many things that go into it, injuries, stuff like that could happen. If Hellebuck, fingers crossed, doesn't, you never know. If he gets hurt, they're a bit of a mess. I mean, Eric Comrie's okay, but you don't you don't want to have him in net for too long. But yeah, if Hellebuck stay healthy, they're pretty good. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. That's something to monitor. All right, let's finish with the Maple Leafs and our news and rumors here. They're getting healthier, which they're going to have some problems with cap space, with again roster being a bit full, especially with the defenseman coming back. And Connor Timmins has seemed to playing really well now, and he's one of those guys that we can talk about maybe coming out of the lineup or maybe even getting traded to make room for Hakanpää coming in. So. Jim, do you see any moves? What moves do you think could happen for the Maple Leafs? What guys could get moved?
Well, I'm sure they could move guys. I'm not sure right now they want to do anything with their roster. I know they're in second place. Their record is pretty good, but I like their team.
Hmm.
And I think as we talked about earlier with injuries, um, to have guys that look, if you got to send somebody down, depth is always huge. And I'm sure there's areas that they would want to look to, improve. Maybe on the blue line, they would want to be a little bit better. But you look at their roster and going like, yeah, okay, you could trade him. All right, what's the cap hit? What are you going to get for him? Who's going to trade with you?
Hmm.
Um, you know, eh, I right now, unless I got swept away with like a really good draft pick or anything, and I don't think anybody's really struggling there. You got Tanev. I don't know if I hear something about Ekman Larson maybe struggling a little bit. Maybe he could be a possibility. but future down the road, you get injuries. But right now, my if I'm Toronto's GM, my phone is hung up. I'm going like, unless you want to talk Christmas presents or something like that. I'm not really talking about this team, especially now that we're getting healthier. You
I
know,
mean, they might be forced to make a trade or move because of the cap space right now. But I mean, Nicholas
yeah.
Robertson has been in the rumors forever. He could be moved. They already moved Liljegren to the Sharks, so I mean that was a move that was anticipated. But yeah, it's getting. There's just been talk about it that they might have to just be forced to make a move. Even though they may not want to. What do you think, Jacob, about Maple Leafs? I mean, do they have to make a move? I mean, it seems to be that they might have to because of this so close to the cap.
Well, so you look at the roster right now. Austin Matthews is on IR, and then obviously you have Yanni Hakanpää and Calle Järnkrok on IR as well. Max Pacioretty's going on LTIR. It looks like a hamstring.
Hmm.
Really, really hope it's not his Achilles again,
Yeah.
because that'll be 3 seasons in a row that he's dealing with long-term Achilles injuries. But I believe by my count they need to move one player
Hmm.
to activate Matthews, Hakanpää, and Järnkrok. They might need to move two, but I think it's just one. And I think there's a really easy option. It's just not easy to move. And that's Ryan Reeves. Why is
Hmm.
he an NHL regular in 2024? I don't get what he brings. His advanced stats are terrible. He's not he's a vibes guy, which they can be important. But when you have a guy like Calle Järnkrok who's actually impactful coming back, like if it was between Connor Dewar and Ryan Reeves, and you really valued the vibes that Ryan Reeves brings. Sure, I get the argument there, but Calle Järnkrok's a really impactful player, and so I, I don't know, I don't see why you would keep him over either Yanni Hakanpää, who has been a great defensive presence, or Calle Järnkrok, who's also been a great defensive presence. So I think they both helped line up a whole lot more than Ryan Reeves. If you do want to keep Ryan Reeves, I think the other option is going to be David Kampf.
Hmm.
Not really good fourth line guy, but not at 2.5 million. So I think moving his money would help them as well.
Yeah, it's just bottom six type guys. I think they'd be looking to move defensemen. At this point, I think Liljegren was the guy that was the biggest one to move. I think outside of him, I don't think they're moving anyone else. I think Ryan Reeves, like you say, the easiest just waive him
Yeah.
on waivers. Try to send him to the AHL, and there you go. But yeah, it just seems like he's been a regular to start the season, which is interesting. But we'll see. We'll see what they do on that front. All right, let's talk about the Hall of Fame induction weekend here. A bunch of players getting inducted: Natalie Darwitz, David Poyle, Pavel Datsyuk, Shea Weber, Chrissy Wendell, Colin Campbell, and Jeremy Roenick. Obviously, not all players, but into the front office as well. I, Jim, you have any thoughts on the inductees? I know when they were announced, there was some there's always that talk about who should be in, who shouldn't be at this point, but obviously all of them deserving to get into the Hall of Fame. You have any thoughts on any of the guys that were and women getting put into the Hall?
Well, as you can probably tell from my jersey back here, maybe you can't see it because it's flipped. I'm happy that Jeremy Roenick got put in. As a Blackhawk fan and somebody who's followed him for a while. Um, yeah, as a player, he probably deserved it. I know there was a little bit of a question about him, but I was happy about that. I mean, I don't have a problem with anybody who got in. Again, it's always like any of the Hall of Fames for the major sports. It's the snubs who got passed over.
Yeah.
So, you look to see if that's, dealt with, in the future or anything like that. But all six, and I was just, when I was looking at the weekend, I was reading their bios. It was like, yeah, absolutely. Are there others that should be getting in? We'll talk about that later, but yeah. But these six were excellent choices.
Jacob, what about you? Any thoughts on the Hall of Fame?
Well, looking at the list, Datsuk, Weber, Roenick, Poyle, Darwitz, Wendell, those are all great inductees. They all deserve it. why is Colin Campbell in the Hockey Hall of Fame as a builder?
Yeah.
Like, do you remember when the emails got leaked from Savard about him complaining about calls? Like he was complaining to NHL referees about them calling penalties on his kid. And he was with the department. He was with the NHL. He was working for the NHL, and he's telling referees to not call penalties on his son. Why isn't that a Pete Rose level scandal thing? Like, because that's having a
Yeah.
huge impact on everything in the game. It's going to help his team win. It arguably did help the Bruins win in 2011. Um, I don't understand why he has worked for the NHL since then. I don't understand why he's being inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame as a builder. I don't know. I think that kind of ruined some of the credibility from both the NHL and the Hall of Fame with that move. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that was probably the one that kind of stuck out to me too. It was like, yeah, okay. I mean, it's probably some better guys to get put in over him, but yeah, that was an interesting one. Yeah, all the other people, all the other inductees definitely deserving. Looking at Shea Weber, I mean, everyone's saying, well, he, didn't win a cup, blah blah blah. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, there's a lot of Hall of Famers that do have cups, but.
I just don't think Shea Weber should have been a first ballot. I think that's
Hmm.
ridiculous. But I'm not upset that he's going into the Hall of Fame, but first ballot, I'm like, really?
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, he great career. I mean,
Yeah.
definitely deserving to be in there. But yeah, first ballot's kind of an interesting one. Looking at Datsuk, definitely. I mean, he's one of the best. I mean, it's probably one of the more exciting players in his era to watch, and probably the best two-way player I've ever seen. In fact, that he could win Selkies and always was one of the higher takeaways. I had the highest takeaway numbers. I mean, you had to worry about him taking the puck away from you when you were around him too. So I mean, yeah, very exciting player to watch. And Roenick, definitely, like you said, Jim, and yeah, and the two women getting put into two of the more bigger leaders on Team USA, both captains for them. Yeah, and have insane stats, world championships, Olympics, and all that too. So yeah,
Mhm.
all of them. And David Poyle, you can't really talk. I mean, he basically built the Nashville Predators and was their GM from the beginning. So yeah, lots of good stuff there.
Well, hockey's no different than the other Hall of Fames either. Both baseball and football have put in executive type guys that have been more of like, well, we're doing this as a favor to you. So when I looked it over and I saw Campbell, I was actually referring to the other five. I'm going like, oh yeah, this is, one of their guys. Like mention certain guys in the NFL or in the Pro Football Hall of Fame that shouldn't be there, but their buddies put them in. So hockey's no different than that. They go in, that's fine. I look at more of the players and the other people who are directly involved because there's going to be more that go in that we're going to be doing the same thing.
For sure. I mean, every year we have this conversation about guys being put in and what they should not be put in. So, yeah, for sure. And it actually works perfectly going into our next conversation, and that's guys or women that should be put into the next Hall of Fame class. Obviously, there's always the main ones that always seem to not get in, like Alexander McGillney. I every year he's been eligible for a long time and still isn't in the hall. So Jacob, I'll start with you. Who do you think should be inducted next in 2025?
I think it's got to go with Keith Kachuk. I don't understand how he's still not in. You look at so all-time goal leaders that are not in the Hall of Fame. Of all the eligible players, the only player that has more goals is Patrick Marleau. And that's just because Patrick Marleau played forever and a half. But like 500 goals and 1,000 points, that's an easy lock for the Hall of Fame. Um, Even still, like the list of players that aren't in the Hall of Fame is Ovechkin, Yager, Crosby, Marleau, Stamkos. That's it ahead of him. I don't understand why he's not in. Jimmy Roenick has less than him.
Yeah.
Um, like Bernie Nichols has less than him. Alexander McGillney has less. He should be in the Hall of Fame. But if I was to throw another name out there, it would be Rod Brindamore. I think the
Hmm.
two of them absolutely deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I agree with both those guys for sure. Jim, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with those two. Those were the two on my list from the snubs. And I'm thinking of another one, a little minor, since you pointed out the ladies that made it. Fran Ryder, who is a true pioneer
Hmm.
of women's hockey, is somebody who definitely should be, and she's already in the IIHF Hall of Fame.
Hmm.
Let's get her in the Hockey Hall of Fame too. She did so much for women's hockey. It's her turn. I think coming up there's some interesting candidates. I think I saw in 2025 you have Duncan Keith, Zdeno Chara, and of course, one of my favorites because this is really good beer is Joe Thornton. So I think those are kind of locks for next year. I think they have the resume to easily be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, those are great ones. And the one that I think Alex McGillney, and he needs to be at one point here. He's just been so snubbed so many times. I think he'll hopefully be one of the next years here.
Have we ever heard of a really good reason why he isn't in? I mean, there's always these little
Yeah.
innuendos and rumors, and well, he wasn't really that good. It's just a really interesting, thing about how a guy who was so good is not there yet.
Mm. I don't think so. I don't think we have really know why he keeps getting snubbed. But yeah.
So I actually didn't realize, but Bernie Nichols is not in the Hall of Fame.
Uh,
That's he. I changed my vote to him. I mean, like
yeah,
he scored
that's an
70 goals and 150 points in the NHL. Why is he not in the Hall of Fame? He's the all-time leader, unless Kopitar passed him, in LA Kings goals and
yeah,
points. How is he not in the Hall of Fame? That's
that's an
ridiculous.
interesting one. Yeah. Huh. I thought he was too.
Yeah, because after I said Kachuk, going through that list, I was like, I think Bernie Nichols is in, but hang on, let me check, and I didn't. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, that is for sure. All right, let's talk about two guys that'll probably end up in the Hall of Fame at some point. And that is Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar. Two of the best defensemen right now in the NHL. I mean, they've been last few seasons, and this is done before comparisons between the two guys. But right now, Jacob, this is a tough choice, but who is the best defenseman in the NHL right now? Quinn Hughes or Cale Makar?
And in this edition of Canucks Corner, um, I mean, they're both phenomenal. If I had to pick one to be the backbone of my team, it would have to be Cale Makar, just because of what he's already done. Quinn Hughes is showing what he can do, and he is doing it. But I mean, like, you look at Cale Makar, he's got a Conn Smythe already, he's got a cup, he's got a Norris, he's got Calder, he's got the Hobie Baker. He's got a very very impressive resume, and Quinn Hughes is going to get there. He just hasn't yet. So today I'm going to take Cale Makar,
All
but
right,
it's
Jim.
a very small gap.
It is very small. Jim, what about you? Who would you pick to lead your team? I mean, they're both amazing defensemen.
You'd love to have either one of them. There's no doubt about that. But I agree with Jacob. Just by a little, you want Makar. Um, he's doing a little bit better in scoring this year. I think the stat, that for Makar is he is a -6, but I think that's also due to some really shaky goaltending, that's happened with the Avalanche at the beginning of the season. Hughes is, I think, a +6. I was looking up. They're both outstanding young players. You would love to have either one of them on your team, but I'm just going to give a slight nod to Makar.
Not being a homer at all, but
Oh
I'm going
yeah.
Quinn Hughes. And that's because of one thing, and I will say I is that Quinn Hughes does not have Nathan McKinnon on his team. And that there's a stat, an advanced stat that this season alone is that whenever Makar's he is on the ice with McKinnon almost the entire, he has so much ice time with him on the ice. And I feel, and the stats are ridiculous on how many high danger chances are generated when he's with McKinnon than when he's not with McKinnon. And Quinn Hughes, on the other hand, when he's not with the Canucks top players, which is, I would say, probably JT Miller at this point and Brock Besser, he has better high danger chances without the top players. So he drives play more than Makar does, according
But
to
did
the
you ever
Red
think about
Stats.
the fact that Nathan McKinnon's only good because he has Cale Makar?
Could be that too. It could be either way,
Nathan
right?
McKinnon's a bum.
It could be either way. Yeah, but Quinn, I mean, it's very small too. I mean, but right now I'd say Quinn Hughes is just he's just so good. I mean, and Makar too. I mean, these two guys being in the NHL at the same point is a treat for right now to watch, and that's they're going to be battling for Norris trophies for probably the next like what 5 6 years, maybe even more between the two guys. So yeah, it's a nice battle, and it'd be nice from when the Canucks play the Avalanche the first time here this season to see how they go up against each other. And Makar's had the measure of it lately whenever they play against him, but hopefully this season is different for Hughes. All right, next up, Jacob. Looking at the teams in a playoff position right now, which team do you think won't be there when American Thanksgiving hits? Which is not very far from now. It's about 2 weeks, and that's usually the benchmark that everyone kind of looks at. If someone's in the playoffs, they most likely will make it. Who's going to fall out of that position?
I'm either gonna hurt your feelings or steal your answer, Jim, but I'm gonna go with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't have faith in them this year. Nikita Kucherov is unreal, of course, but outside of that, like nobody's really impressing me a whole bunch from an outside view. Like, sure, some of their bottom six guys are playing fairly well and whatnot, but just taking a step back and looking at the whole team, it's like, yeah, everybody's kind of doing what they should be, but like nobody's really standing out super crazy. Obviously, Kucherov is doing what Kucherov is going to do, but I don't know. I don't love their roster this year, and I don't think, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go with the Lightning. I think they're going to fall out of the playoffs.
All right, Jim, you got that same one, or you got a different team?
They would be one of my teams. That was one that I was, definitely looking at, and I agree with you. They're playing okay, and they played okay, and lost a couple games on their Western trip. Yes, they lost to Winnipeg. They were clearly Winnipeg again is the better team, but they came home and only put up one goal against the Flyers team that's been struggling in defense and goal, and they had to play their backup goal. They had one goal. So, again, bottom six a little bit, but you see a lot of the top six up there. And I think they're still, maybe like what Nashville is doing to a lesser degree, struggling with, incorporating some of their newer guys into the system. Gensel's been okay, but, I think Kucherov is missing Stamkos a little bit. His numbers are well, last year, was a little bit of a outlier, but, he's doing well, but he is, a little bit down. So yeah, that would be the one of them. The other team that I was looking at that I'm a little worried about are the Calgary Flames.
Hmm.
They're there right now, but they're 3-5-2, I think, in their last 10, and they're looking, a little sluggish of late. So if I don't think they don't turn around their fortunes, and there are some, really good teams behind them, like Edmonton, who's starting to, put it together, that could, easily pass them in the next 2.5 weeks before we hit American Thanksgiving, November 28th, I believe, this year. So, you know,
It's getting close. And the Flames did turn it around a little bit. I mean, they're still in the mix, but I think they've dropped off from what they were at the beginning of the season. We kind of thought that was going to happen. But we'll see how that all goes. I definitely think the Flames are one that probably will fall out of that playoff picture. Um, yeah, I would go with the Flames at this point for me. All right, let's talk about some free agents. I mean, there's some, of course, disappointing ones, but let's, Jacob, who do you think is has had the biggest impact on their new team so far? And I won't put the caveat about bargain, whatever. It's just overall. What free agent has made the biggest difference?
Yeah, this was a hard one. There's a lot of guys that you're kind of looking at and s- expecting more out of. Jake Gensel's playing fine. Obviously, want more out of Stamkos and Marchessault. But Tyler Toffoli has been one of the most important UFA signings this offseason. Just because like, he's not obviously going to be a superstar on that Sharks team, but he's been a great mentor. He's playing some really good hockey. He's getting a lot of points. So maybe he's not the most impactful UFA that was signed in the offseason, but I think that he is one of the most important.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think he basically he signed there. I mean, he meant being a mentor for sure for all the younger guys, and Macklin Celebrini being back in the lineup now playing with him. That's a big thing for sure. Jim, what about you? Who do you see as the biggest impact free agent right now?
That's a tough list because you said the big free
Wow.
agents that you would expect to be doing something aren't the ones that you can include. And Matthew, I think you might like this one. I Jake DeBrusk is second on Vancouver in scoring. That's a nice signing. I think he's been, again, being well past my bedtime. I've seen less Canucks games than probably some other ones, but the ones I have watched, he's looked like he's kind of making an impact at times. I like him for a team that's building and not doing well. We're not talking about them because they're not in the playoffs. Ryan Donato on the Blackhawks
Hmm.
has
Hmm.
played very well. He's
Yeah.
been a super help to Bedard. I think he's second on their team, in scoring. I didn't have that on my, bingo card for the Blackhawks going in. I thought he would do well. I even wrote that I thought he would, be a nice bargain. And then, we got to give some goaltender love. Stolarz in Toronto,
Hmm.
you know, if you don't have a, Connor Hellenbach,
Hmm.
you need another guy. And being, great backup in Florida last year, and whether he ends up playing more than Wall or anybody else or not. But I think that was a really nice, free agent pickup for the Maple Leafs.
I will add another one too, and that's going to be Stefan Nason.
Hmm.
He's been like what a turnaround in his career. He really struggled to find stability for almost a decade in the NHL. And then he finally landed with Carolina and did really well and did even better the next year and then went in free agency and now he's with the Devils and
Hmm.
he's got 14 points in 17 games and he's been one of their best depth options. So
Hmm.
I'll give a huge shout out to him too.
Yeah, that's big ones. DeBrusque's didn't start out the season very well. I mean, didn't score in his first bunch of games, but he's on a three-game goal streak early, and of course broke that against the Oilers. Didn't score there, but yeah, he's turned it a bit around, and he has looked more like the guy that the Canucks were hoping he was going to be when he signed. So yeah, I give it to him right now. And Kiefer Sherwood is my guy in Vancouver here because he's been just amazing. I a lot more than I thought he would be. I mean, I thought definitely being a physical presence, but he's added some offense too, and it's been a pest. A lot of guys are now afraid to go into corners because he's going to hit you. I mean, he's leading the NHL in hits by pretty wide margin right now. And he's on pace for an insane amount to finish with. So he's been a big impact player for the Canucks on a third line with Danton Heinen and Teddy Bluger. So I remembered all the guys' names this time. Um, yeah, they're definitely a big impact trio. So, and Kiefer Sherwood's been a big part of that. And Kevin Lankinen, what can you say about him? I mean, yes, he had a horrible third period against the Oilers, but playing that many games in a row, he's not used to it. I think maybe a bit fatigued. But he's been a big player for the Canucks with Demko out. So for less than $1 million, that's pretty good. Um, Having the numbers that he's got, of course, got inflated because he allowed 7 against the Oilers, but still pretty good numbers to start the season. All right, let's finish with this is a very early predictions, but Hart Trophy candidates because there's a lots of guys that have started out the season ridiculously well. Kirill Kaprizov has started out phenomenal for the Wild. I don't know if he's leading the NHL in points still. I think
No, McKinnon
no, it's
is.
McKinnon now again.
McKinnon is, yeah.
But yeah, not Kucherov's in around there too. But Kaprizov's got 27 points. You got McKinnon with 29 leading the way there. Martin Necas, 23 points. That's an interesting name in there. Dylan Strome too. But for Hart Trophy, who do you have in your list right now, Jacob?
Number one is going to be Connor Hellebuck, and I don't think there should be any argument against that. Number two, I'm going to go Kaprizov, and number three, I will go with Sam Reinhart.
Good, all three. Definitely good ones. Jim, who do you have on your list?
Oh, I like Kaprizov and what he's done too. I think you're going to have to also take a strong look again at McKinnon,
Mm.
especially if he can keep those numbers up. He's always in the conversation, and as well he should be. I have no argument. The goalies got their own ones, but if Hellebuyck is far and away playing like he is, I have no problem with that. And you mentioned Nakes in Carolina. It's like, well, keep that going. Sitting down in the Carolinas and not getting as much news as everybody else. The Hurricanes PR department may be starting to wind some things up in the spring to get his name out there if he continues at that pace. He's really doing very well for them this year. And if he continues, he should be part of the conversation.
For sure. Even looking at a guy like Alexander Ovechkin right now, he's got 10 goals, 18 points, 14 games. He's up in there not right at the top, but he's around there. I just thought of this question because Ovechkin, and we'll finish the show with this one. Ovechkin is in double digits already in goals. He's now 33 away from Gretzky. Does he do it this season? Jim, what do you think?
With the pace that he's going at, I think he could. And the fact that the Capitals are playing well around him, you mentioned like, wait, Dylan Strome is in the top 10 in scoring. Well, where am I?
Yeah.
Not that, I thought he's always been a very good player, but he's never, done anything like that. But they may have, found him. All the Capitals seem to be, doing really well. So I think, next March and April could be kind of interesting, to see what goes on because he could definitely, I think, get that close, by then this year.
Jacob, what do you got? Did Ovechkin do it this season?
He does, and I have the exact date for you. It's going to be February. It's going to be February 22nd against Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Ah, well, I mean, what does he need to do that? I mean, he's got 10 goals. He just
So
has
he
10
needs
goals every 14 games.
that would line up. I think
Line up
that
pretty close.
at his current
Yeah.
pace, February 27th is when he would hit it. So he's got to pick up the pace a little bit to hit by
To
February
do it this.
22nd. Or the
Definitely do
last game
it.
of the season against the Penguins, April 17th.
So if you're near a visiting team, take a look at the calendars and see when Washington is coming to you in
Yeah.
February, March, or April, and you could maybe watch history. That would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When's he in
Yeah.
Ottawa, Jacob? Or when's he going to be in Tampa when down there? So I'm going to start looking for that. I got to see
Yeah.
him play last year, and I was really happy because I've never seen him play live, and that was one of those things I need to see him play in person just because he is who he is.
Yeah. He started off last season really slow. This season, not so much. He started off like the
Yeah.
old Ovechkin, playing like he's a
Right,
25
him
years
and the
old.
Capitals. That's the key. That team needs to keep him going because the whole team slumped at the beginning of last year,
Yeah.
and even as good as he is, he cannot just lift that entire team up by himself. You need help. So if they continue to do that, I think that even makes reaching it by February, March, and this anytime this year more plausible.
Yeah. And Dylan Strome's been a big part of that to start. So
Yeah,
uh,
good for
what
him.
one interesting stat, he's only 2 of his 10 he only has 2 power play goals,
hmm
which I mean, he's got 8 then 5 on 5. That's pretty good. A lot of his goals have been usually on the power play. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see what Ovechkin does for the next few months. He definitely could do it this season. All right. Well, thanks, Jacob, Jim, for coming on, talking a ton of stuff here in our weekly edition here of the Hockey Writers Roundtable. Make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com for all the stories of all the teams as we continue through the season. But until our next episode, we will see you next time.